the Woo. Welcome to the inaugural episode, the first episode of Cinema Woo Woo. Thanks for dropping by. Under sad circumstances, we lost David Lynch today, or, whenever you catch this video, January 16th, he passed away. So, I wasn't planning to roll out this channel, but I wanted to say something once I heard. This channel's still in the planning stages. I'm not really sure how I'm going to present it. But anyway, yeah. Why did I say so? Because he's one of my, bigger influences. And, pretty bummed. And we lost a great one. David Lynch, can't get any better than that. One of the true, probably the last great cinema auteurs of the last 2 decades. Even going back to, maybe the 70s, I guess, late 70s at least, or the latest, 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s. So, one of the great ones. Probably the last, like I said, the artist slash, cinema directors. Those you can't find them anymore. Well, can't find them at all anymore after the passing of David Lynch. I think that's what's hitting us all hard now. Those of us who have been into cinema for a long time, as I have. Not movies, not even films, not TV, but television and cinema. So, he falls into those two categories, and then art, fine art or modern art, whatever you want to call it, because that's where his background started from. And that's a rare mix. And a lot of the originals of that, kind of milieu have been passed a long time now. And he was the very last one, in my humble opinion. Someone who I studied film my whole life, even as a kid, just one of those weird kids that loved to, loved movies. I was exposed to all kinds of films as a kid, old films, black and white, films going back to the 30s, even earlier, all the great films of the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, of course. But, as a kid, certainly a lot of the early films. So I'm grateful to that. Probably a lot of the films, probably I was too young to, have viewed, but that's the way it goes. But I've definitely integrated all that into me over the years by now. And I'm very grateful for that in this time. And I gave myself an education in film, not only, by my own hands and by both parents, but also, the classes I took in school. And I was lucky. When I first started taking film classes and in the late 90s and early 2000s, one of the classes I had was in the early 2000s, and there was a, independent film class. It was specifically on indie films from the 80s on into that time, which is probably, I would say, I don't know, maybe 2005, 2006, maybe 7 at the latest. I don't remember exactly when I took that class, but yeah, it was a great, movies you've never even heard of. I'd have to sit down and try to remember some of them. But yeah, just we reviewed a lot of the great independent films of that era, and David Lynch was very much part of that. And I remember growing up in the 90s, I just out of high school, and I was exposed to David Lynch, in '84 with Dune, his version of Dune, which blew my mind. Blew my mind as a kid.
You are about to enter a world where the unexpected.
Many dangers exist on Arrakis.
And that was, this is, again, in the 80s. I was in grade school. Been exposed to, all the great Star Trek and Star Wars movies. And then this movie comes along and just like, it's both of those on steroids. And yeah, I know the third act falls apart. And it's not his fault, There's a whole discussion on that we'll get into right now. But yeah, the production design and his eye and his visual storytelling, so close to be. It is one of the classic science fiction films. I don't care what anybody says. And I know there's a longer version of more of his stuff in it and kind of more completed, which I, to be honest, I haven't seen yet. I haven't gotten to that yet, but I could just imagine if he was just left alone. It was Dino De Laurentiis and the production company. And they just, because it was back in the day, back in the day when they didn't realize, you just have to give, especially they didn't realize. I don't know. It's a long discussion about those days and, the artist versus the, filmmaker versus production companies and so on and so forth. But wow, you wouldn't have the current iteration of Dune without David Lynch's Dune. And that's can easily be said. No problem. And yeah, I think he's one of the great filmmakers of our time. He really he nailed it in terms of bringing film from the French New Wave and the kind of gritty American films from the 60s and the 70s. As Hollywood proper was recovering from the kind of over gilded age of the 50s and 60s, and we're kind of re-experiencing that time again, and we're now entering a time of a rebirth of Hollywood, literally by fire, and just by the fact that people aren't showing up to the theaters anymore and checking in any level, whether it's streaming or whatever. Because the movies suck today. A lot of movies suck today. It's rare to have. The like the current Dunes are awesome, are great, and man, it's such a rarity. Thank God. But yeah, David Lynch, he kind of carried on the last rebirth of Hollywood in terms of artistic, grittiness and artistic value, and brought it all the way into, the 80s, 90s, and even into the 2000s, which is no easy task. I think, we're going to remember him for that, and television, with Twin Peaks. He did both. He did, he both cinema and television. And what he gave us was bringing the best of independent auteurs of that time, of the late 80s and early 90s, and he brought it to mainstream cinema. That's what he did. That's his gift to us, as viewers, as other artists, as reviewers, as lovers of cinema. And I'm going to use that film. I'm going to use that term cinema in television as opposed to TV and film, because he went beyond that. He did. He entered and held, he was able to give us not just TV, but television, and not film, but cinema. When a lot of that went away, like, in the 70s, and even some might even say the 60s. You had the kind of gaudiness of the 50s and early 60s, and that brought Hollywood down, like with movies like Cleopatra. Beautiful films on their own, but just not sustainable. And films like Heaven Gate in the 80s, and just again not sustainable, beautiful on the surface, but heavily flawed as well. And he was able to break things down to almost street level artistry.
Life is full of surprises.
but at the same time, bring it up to a high level of modern art, of contemporary art. And we may never see that again. I don't think I don't think we've seen it at all since even when he was alive. His work was the only work that could be described as that. And now, I mean, he's kind of been, semi-retired. He's, done little things here and there. But yeah, it's going to be a long time until we see that again. And so it's a gift. His films are a gift to all of us, and he will be missed. Maybe there's another Lynch out there. Who knows? I think times have to change before we see that again. And that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just the way it is. It's how history goes and how art goes, how things unfold, and they do go in patterns, and they do go in cycles. And we're kind of in an in-between cycle right now. But I think we're headed into a better cycle. We're moving out into a not so good cycle, and we're moving into a good cycle. I firmly believe that. And I think we will see other Lynches and or others like him start to come out soon. Maybe not so soon, but maybe if we're lucky, sooner than later. But yeah, anyway, and and David Lynch, he comes with his kind of issues, but not really much. I mean, he was kind of pure in a way. He's into, transcendental meditation. That's probably his only, I love meditation. I've been meditating since 2007. Probably have to get back to a little bit more. But yeah, he was into the transcendental, so in other words, you had to pay money to get the whole, recipe to how to do that, but which is kind of, that's kind of lame. But anyway, you got to make a buck or whatever. You have to, at least he wasn't into Scientology or whatever. So, I can definitely tell you, meditation in general is a good thing. But yeah, he was definitely the consummate artist, and that came through his work. And it's funny because he's mostly known for like Mulholland Drive, Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet. But my favorite film of his is Wild at Heart. And it's kind of a corny. It's kind of just probably one of his trashiest films, but it's totally trashy, totally pulpy. But I think that's what he did well. That's what all of his films are trashy at one level or another.
You got me hotter than Georgia asphalt.
And certainly pulpy at one level. He was able to kind of really dial down on this kind of like a mid-century pulp, Americana milieu, and then go levels literally show it, go levels deeper than that, and go below to show that this kind of almost fake surface, this fake kind of Americana mid-century surface, and then go below that. And he literally showed us that. He nailed that, and he did it in most of his films. And Wild at Heart is and Blue Velvet too. I think really captured that out of all of his films, and definitely in a lot of different ways too. Twin Peaks also, where that kind of small town Americana, and then he took us underneath, and I think that's something very, very important, even today. It's a very important statement on human nature, and whether you're from America or Europe or wherever. I think that's universal. So he was able to speak to us in universal terms, but via very specific visuals and aesthetics. And I think he was able to do that because he was at first an artist, a true artist. And I think he really understood aesthetics. I know aesthetics is a big thing now. We never thought of it much back then. Just kind of things were, whether you're talking about mid-century or, Art Deco or, New Wave or whatever it is, whatever it was. But now we kind of understand, have a deeper understanding of aesthetics and how they have the the impact that they have on our culture. And he was able to really bring those to bear, but without being overbearing, without hammering. You watch a movie now that tries to pretend to be, edgy and hard edge, or, whatever you want to call it. And it's just like they're pounding it into our brains, and it's like, it doesn't work. Sorry, it doesn't work, because it's very ad hoc and very, derivative. It's just like, it's just not, no one's been able to do it like he does. It's very, like, we've seen it before because of David Lynch, and no one has been able to give us that kind of same narrative, visual narrative and aesthetic narrative, without having to be obvious about it. And because he was the master at not being obvious about it, by actually being way obvious about it. But like, you're watching a scene in this movie, you're like, what the fuck? You're taking, it's like an acid hit, but you don't have to take the actual acid. You're just watching, the acid be presented to you visual, audio, in an audio and visual, sense. And just, you're, as a viewer, taking that in, and you're going on this David Lynch, trip, and, and without any other substances, although other substances do help when watching his films. And, but yeah, and he makes it fun too, without being, again, overbearing and boring about it. And he was kind of like, this, he's from mid-America pretty much. But then he totally understood the kind of West Coast pulpy, trashy yet high art, aesthetic. And he was able to craft that into his films. And I think he has given us a lot to enjoy and a lot to think about in his movies. They're very rewatchable, every one. I mean, because you learn something and you find something new in every one of his films. I've been coming lately. I've been enjoying his smaller films. Like, I mean, I remember seeing Wild at Heart as soon as it hit video. That's because, me and my friends back in the day, that's our thing. Our thing was to, get his movies and on VHS and 4x3, on shitty tube TVs, and watch his movies. And, it blew our minds, and I've been I've been kind of collecting, his movies on DVD or Blu-ray, and being able to watch them in their full, aspect ratio and in full sound, and on my big screen. And oh man, it's a joy. It's awesome. But yeah, I mean, he was still able to, back in the day, like I said, on VHS and crappy TVs. In a way, I kind of miss that, kind of way. In a way, that was, for a moment in time, that was the best way to watch his work. If you didn't catch it on, in the cinema, where obviously his work would be the best. But I know that millions of people caught on to his work, later on outside of the cinema.
Cult films on video, one of the strangest films in recent years, seems to be renting strongly around the country, and its title is Eraserhead.
On small TVs and VHS decks, and that's okay too. And I think that's what kind of makes his probably an unintentional effect, that he could never have foreseen. But yeah, I mean, a lot of us enjoyed his movies that way, and then to see them on screen. I remember seeing Mulholland Drive on that big screen. I think that was my first movie, or the only movie. I mean, because I don't think I've gone to repertoire theater, and I've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind on the big screen, and Raiders of the Lost Ark on the big screen, and one or two other films on the big screen. I don't think I've ever seen any other film other than Mulholland Drive on the big screen. And yeah, I mean, what a treat. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to come out and give some memories on David Lynch. I mean, he's like, he makes a trifecta for me, because the first filmmaker and storyteller that affected me on their passing was Gene Roddenberry of Star Trek. And then Jim Henson, not too long after that, was tough for me. And then now David Lynch. So yeah, anyway, Godspeed to him. He's now in the craziest David Lynch scene ever, more crazier than he can ever have put to film himself. So Godspeed, David Lynch, and God bless. And yeah, welcome to Cinema Woo Woo. Not going to promise too many videos in the near future because I'm still working on my main channel right now, Intel Debrief. I'll put a link in that for you if it's a geopolitical channel. And this, I've been working on this. Again, I'm not sure how I'm going to present videos on this channel, but I'm actually really excited about Cinema Woo Woo. So yeah, I'll let you know and check in for the next Cinema Woo Woo. So thank you for showing up for this one, and take care, and God bless. Bye.
We're going to be seeing once again beautiful blue skies and golden sunshine all along the way. Everyone, have a great day.